Hey guys, it's your favorite Dinobot here, and welcome to a new series. What if Alita the Battle Angel was in Transformers Animated? So I actually hope you guys enjoy this story. Please comment down below, like and subscribe, and share with your friends, and let us begin. Now, our story does take place with a couple canon events happening. The whole entire thing of the Autobots, unfortunately, making their way to Earth because of, good old Decepticons and stuff there does happen. However, a slight change does happen in this timeline. A little cross of a couple things does happen. You see, when the Autobots crash land, Professor Isaac Sumdag does not find just one protoform, he finds two, one holding the other. And so, because of his DNA, this gives birth to Sari and Alita. Now, they'll both look, I guess you could say, somewhat similar, or they basically are born just more organic. However, Alita, being the older of the two, is aware that she is a little different. But she keeps this to herself, not wanting to spook Sari or spook her adoptive father. So for the next couple years, Isaac Sumdag does raise them as his daughters and, well, builds Detroit just like in the original. However, slight changes do happen when, well, Transformers Rollout Part 2 does happen, and they, the Autobots gotta all of a sudden awaken and stuff. They all go out up there and they have to fight against a giant bug monster. However, Sari actually runs towards Alita when she's actually scared by Bulkhead and Bumblebee. And this is where Alita actually brandishes her sword. And yes, this does change a lot of things, and they're actually a bit startled and shocked by the fact that Alita does have such capabilities. And believe it or not, because of Alita, and she's actually able to help them and even analyze the bug herself, this actually allows them to beat the mutated insect a lot earlier. And so when they go back to the ship to help Prowl, Sari's key does manage to obviously bond with the Allspark and stuff like that, and well, she winds up saving Prowl's life just like in the original. And well, the Autobots do get acquainted with Earth. But now with them being acquainted to Earth, Alita does have some questions about them and maybe can help her figure out what she is. She's been struggling to grapple with her identity for years. People see her as nothing more than a freak and a monster. She's always felt like she belonged somewhere else. And believe it or not, the Autobots do try their best to kind of explain who she is or what she is, but she can't really fathom that at the moment. The Autobots can't really explain how techno-organic combinations work because they never experience it. Matter of fact, they don't even really have any techno-organic experience. However, Optimus does think in the back of his head about Alita, aka Blackarachnia. Now, another thing that does happen is home is where the spark is. This episode, in all honesty, yeah, I'm gonna say this episode relatively does take the same, except with the fact that which we'll call it, the Isaac Sumdag robots, when they do go on a rampage, this is where Alita actually showcases her battle skills and is easily able to take them down. Now, total Meltdown, believe it or not, does happen relatively the same. However, Meltdown does get an obsession with Alita, and well, it's kind of a obviously not a healthy obsession, and he's actually thinks and actually sees Alita as the perfect, and I mean this in every simple way, perfect combination between man and machine, and thinks that she is everything he wants, everything that not only he would want to be, but everything he wants to achieve and create. So when he actually becomes Meltdown, it actually comes to the conclusion that he needs to have her. He needs to get a hold of her and experiment on her. Maybe reverse engineer that technology and see if not only could it cure himself, but maybe make him into something more. And well, believe it or not, this episode does take place relatively the same, except we see Alita being able to use the force field around herself thanks to Sari, and she's the one to actually knock out Meltdown by utilizing the shield to keep herself safe while she applies her advanced combat skills. And actually seeing her combat skills in action, Prowl actually notes that this is impressive. She actually knows Metallico. It's not a perfected form, but it's actually quite interesting. And believe it or not, this is where Prowl actually extends the invitation for Alita to join the Autobots, or at least join him in training. And Sari does kind of feel a little bit left out and a little bit neglected by her older sister, but she tries to keep that hidden, at least for right now. Now, here's where an episode does change. Blast from the past. This episode does happen like in the original. However, here's the difference. Alita's roaming around and she hears, some talking in her tower. And when she enters the room, she sees the Dinobots active and about, kind of looking around. Now, Grimlock has already pretty much, kind of taken that name, but Megatron kind of shuts himself down, or makes it appear that he shuts himself down. And well, this is where Alita basically greets the Dinobots. Now, keep in mind, the Dinobots are kind of the same as the original. Again, I do not like the fact that they were bumbling idiots. Like, it just made no sense. But again, they are still, the Dinobots nevertheless. So this is where Alita not only befriends them, but when they try to go on a rampage, thinking about all the things that Megatron said, Alita grounds them very quickly by actually beating them in combat and making them sit. Basically like giant dogs in a way. Now again, not how I would want to treat them, but this actually changes a lot of things. The Dinobots are now still with Isaac Sumdac, but under Alita's care, as she would not want them to be melted. And believe it or not, this episode actually takes a different turn. With Megatron really never convincing the Dinobots to go on a rampage, this means they're not only allowed to live a lot longer, but they're allowed to learn. They're allowed to be studied by Isaac Sumdac, and they actually get a brain boost so that they don't go on a, I guess you could say, a mindless rampage because of their stupidity. So the Dinobots are not only a lot smarter in this timeline, but they're just there. They learn to transform a lot earlier as well, and this is where they actually see Sari as their, Alita as their older sister, and Sari as kind of the runt of the group, which does, make her feel inadequate. Now, the next episode that still does take place the same is The Thrill of the Hunt. This is about Ratchet and the Great Autobot War, or, him in Lockdown's old beef and all that, but that's still going to take place the same. But let's just talk about what's happening during this episode. Sari feels neglected, wanting to really find herself, if you will, and she wants to be a part of what her big sister has. She's got all these friends while she feels lonely, as if her sister never cared. And well, Sari does kind of make a mistake and accidentally activates some tools in the lab. This causes things to kind of get deadly for her, and well, Alita and the Dinobots actually show up and manage to rescue Sari. However, Sari does get a cut on her, I guess you could say the same area on her elbow, and believe it or not, this actually exposes her techno-organic nature. And rather than be mad about it, Alita's happy that her sister is much like her than she expected. So this means that Sari actually gets her biomechanical parts, or her bioorganic technology, or pretty much her techno-organic self, pretty much exposed earlier. I think I said a lot, didn't I? And this is where Alita decides that she can now personally train Sari and maybe, I don't know, teach her some things. So, believe it or not, this means that now the sisters can begin to bond on a much deeper level. The next episode we have is Nanosec, and believe it or not, this also takes place the same, and we could actually say Sari's actually learning to deal with her techno-organic nature, and this is where she actually learns to throw at the very least energy balls far earlier than the original, and the Dinobots actually get some combat teaching from Alita, meaning they're a lot more formidable in this timeline. Now, the next episode is Along Came a Spider, and this is where Sari actually does debut her abilities to her Autobot companions, and well, the Dinobots also get into the spirit of Halloween. Now, this actually does take an interesting turn where Blackarachnia shows up and finds out that they're also techno-organic much earlier than the original. But yeah, she still needs that key. How unfortunate, right? So yes, they still get the key like in the, or sorry, she still gets the key like in the original and tries to deactivate her techno-organic self. However, this does affect Sari and Alita in a way, and when the Dinobots see it, their whole fondness for Blackarachnia drops immediately as they see their sisters being hurt. So they actually rush over, punch Blackarachnia out, and take the key. And they're about to finish her off until Optimus steps in, blocking Grimlock's sword strike, and Grimlock is like, what? We not gonna finish her? To which Optimus is like, heck nah, we can't finish her. This is one of my old friends. What is you doing? And Blackarachnia uses that opportunity to escape. The next episode is Sound and Fury, and well, believe it or not, I don't think Soundwave is really born in this timeline, if you will. I think he would remain a toy, as well. Soundwave never really got upgraded by the key, meaning that Soundwave is kind of like a immobile, I guess you could say, toy right now. That's just kind of automatic. Then you might say, okay, why does this happen? Well, believe it or not, Sari has no reason to use the key on Soundwave to make him cooler, as she's kind of satisfied and content with her life. She's got all these powers and abilities, and she also has, well, her sister. She also has the Dinobots, which are her brothers at this point. She's living a very, very great life. Now, the next episode, Headmaster, does take the same, but with the Dinobots there, they're actually able to subdue the Headmaster far quicker than the original, and likely far earlier, considering Swoop can also provide air support and spot the Headmaster immediately. So, yeah, that goes well. The next episode, Nature Calls, also would feature the Dinobots, as again, with them being, well, animalistic in nature, they're able to burn the barnacles to a crisp, and well, this is where they actually discover that the body here belongs to Megatron, and they decide to report this back to Optimus Prime, but lo and behold, Professor Sumdac does find the body and is pretty much unaware of it, and does take it back to Sumdac Tower, kind of like in the original. Now, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot about these two episodes. I'm so sorry. I totally skipped these two. But let's just cover these real quick, right? The next one is, let's see here. We have Survival of the Fittest actually never happened, so yeah, that one never happened. Lost and Found. Okay, let's talk about this here. Matter of fact, let's say Lost and Found actually happens after Nature Calls, because this actually could work out for the better. Lost and Found is where Lugnut and Blitzwing show up and pretty much just start causing havoc and destruction. However, when the Autobots see it happening on their end, they're actually messing around with the Dinobots at this time. So, you know what this means. Oh, good lord, you have Optimus Prime, Bulkhead, Ratchet, Bumblebee, Grimlock, oh gosh, Slug, Swoop, oh, Alita, and a much more experienced Sari, who now has her full techno-organic upgrades, along with her roller skates and at least her wrist blades at this point, along with her energy blast. So, they actually get beaten far earlier in the story than in the original. Oh my gosh, they get jumped so badly. Oh no. I didn't think about that, y'all. I'm so sorry. I did not. Oh. But let's talk about the episode Megatron Rising. With Megatron not really having too many forces to rely on, Megatron does bide his time, but again does contact Lugnut and Blitzwing after they are found and repaired by Starscream. So now with all hands on deck and the Decepticons immobilizing, the Autobots, the Dinobots also are more prepared, but we also have to deal with Alita and Sari. Sari still has the key and she knows that they're going to be gunning for her. So Alita is actually the one that stays with her, and the Autobots don't take the key in this one like the original, because Sari is actually placed not only under Alita's care but under the Dinobots as well. And this is actually where we do get a lot of changes in this timeline. You see, Starscream still goes to find Megatron, monologuing to him and everything. However, this changes significantly with Alita around. You see, Alita being the one to guard Sari does mean that Lugnut and Blitzwing truck the Allspark to her location. Now, let's actually say this is in more of a remote area, like a downtown dock area, where they can actually keep an eye not only on Sari, but keep the Decepticons away from any civilians. This means the Dinobots, Alita, and Sari are facing off against Lugnut and Blitzwing. And believe it or not, Alita actually manages to slice off Blitzwing's cannons, meaning he's actually can't use them. He's just down to his missiles, meaning his tank form is also useless at this point, unfortunately. And then we also have the fact that Lugnut's nuclear punch is the only option. However, with the Dinobots being smarter in this timeline, and Lugnut actually tries to go for a double nuke attack. However, Slug in one hand and Swoop in another, throw their weapons, or pretty much throw, or I guess launch their weapons at Lugnut here, and actually just detonate, just blowing him away, meaning that they honestly have very little choice but to either retreat or possibly risk death at this point. So it's not fair. And then we have another thing, and that being Starscream's interaction with Megatron. And believe it or not, I'm actually going to say Starscream does wind up killing him just like he wanted to. Starscream actually winds up blowing up Megatron's head, killing him right then and there. I know, absolutely insane. But now this just leaves Starscream by himself. He doesn't have anyone at the moment. He doesn't have anything. And this also does change some things significantly here. Megatron Rising Part 2 never happens, so we can actually skip ahead, and the Elite Guard arrives. Well, obviously it does arrive later, but let's just say in Megatron's Rising Part 2, they managed to find and capture Lugnut and Blitzwing, while Starscream is simply contemplating on how they could, get the Allspark away from the Autobots. And if not, maybe just take over this planet entirely. So for right now, the Elite Guard do know the Autobots have, or at least Team Prime, or at least Optimus Prime's team, does have the Allspark at the moment. And believe it or not, with Optimus never being able to disperse the Allspark out of, desperation to keep it out of Megatron's hands. And then we also have the fact that Optimus has 2 Decepticons under his care, and now they have to figure out what the heck happened to Megatron. But here's the thing, Isaac Sumdac was never captured, so this means he has to explain how his entire empire was built off of Megatron. And this actually does piss off, Sari and Alita, but they understand that their dad didn't know. He is kind of a gullible guy, as they honestly say. However, one thing cannot be stopped in this timeline. Sentinel's racism. Yes, we all understand Sentinel cannot stand organics. Even if they're techno-organics, he finds them abomination. And so, we're going to have one of my favorite canon events from What If the Dinobots Helped. Guess who punches him right in the face when he makes an insult towards Alita and Sari? That's right, Grimlock. He punches him dead in the face when he makes that insult. And unfortunately for him, he's not going to be able to do anything about it. And when he actually tries to attack him, this is where the other Dinobots kind of step up, knowing that good and well Sentinel's going to they're going to jump Sentinel at this point. There's no if and or buts about it. And well, Ultra Magnus does make everybody simply stand down, and actually does, congratulate Optimus Prime on this endeavor. And believe it or not, this actually goes into a different interaction with Optimus having Decepticons that he managed to capture. This means he can stay on Earth until the Decepticon threat is pretty much taken care of. But the Elite Guard does take the Allspark. They do. And they take it back to Cybertron. With that being said here, I would probably say they do get their Earth vehicle modes to kind of interact with the human populace for a little bit. But they do wind up meeting, going, oh, actually, no, they actually do stay a little bit, don't they? Well, yeah, let's just go on ahead. The Return of the Headmaster does go the same, except we do get the kind of comedic moment that I do love, where Grimlock does stop Sentinel and tries to tell him the rules of traffic, but when Sentinel tries to get, a little bit bold with him, he just uppercuts Sentinel into a trash bot, and this is where it kind of earns a laughter from Alita. However, with the Dinobots around, Sentinel never gets his head taken off, and well, Alita is the one to slice open the Headmaster, take the dude out, and simply just beats the absolute crap out of him. However, we do have another thing to talk about, that being Starscream. Starscream still does make protoform clones of himself. However, without the Allspark, fragments and stuff, he just makes them the same way he does in the original. He still makes the first two clones, and they do go around causing any havoc and any trouble around the city. So this does mean the Elite Guard do have to take out the Starscream clones until they find the real Starscream. This does mean that Starscream is just an absolute problem overall. The next episode is Garbage In and Garbage Out, which actually takes place very differently because of whatchamacallit, with no Allspark fragments, Wreck-Gar is never born. However, I'm going to create a new monster. Remember the trash monster from Godzilla the series that pretty much just, ate waste in general? Yeah, I'm actually going to say that this monster is born as a result of the humans, careless antics with the trash chemicals. So this means that it can eat everything. And Alita, using her intelligence along with Ratchet, is able to conduct I guess you could say like what's the word I'm looking for? I guess you could say like a counter agent or a counter cure, if you will. Or, an antidote for like the trash monster. But again, the person who gets a hold of the remaining fragment that is still alive is Meltdown. And that's where I'm going to leave it off here, you guys. But let me know what you guys think of this story so far. I have so many plans for actually where this could go. And believe it or not, I'm going to keep some of it within line of the main story, but also with Starscream being now out and about and the Decepticons not even knowing that Megatron is dead, this just makes it so much better for the story, and I can just create a whole bunch of chaos the way I want it. But that's going to be all today, you guys, and I'll see you guys for the next part. Peace.